Hi, Derek, and this one starts in Ohio. What if I told you one single state helped shape the entire space program? Not California, not Texas, Ohio. Somehow, this one place has produced more astronauts than almost anywhere else in America. The first American to orbit Earth, the first man to walk on the moon, and even the most dramatic survival mission in history, all connected back to Ohio. So, the question is, why? Because this isn't just coincidence. There's no launch site in Ohio, no rockets lifting off from the fields, and yet, when history needs someone to go higher, go further, Ohio keeps showing up. Again and again and again. So, to understand why, we need to go back, not to NASA, but the moment humans first left the ground. Before astronauts, before rockets, there were two brothers from Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They weren't funded. They weren't famous. They ran a bicycle shop in Dayton, but they were obsessed with something most people had already given up on: human flight. At the time, it sounded impossible. People had tried and failed for years. Machines broke apart midair, wings snapped under pressure. Some attempts ended in serious injury or even worse. So when two bicycle mechanics said they were going to figure it out, most people didn't take them seriously. But what made them different wasn't just belief, it was how they approached the problem. They didn't guess, they studied birds in flight, how wings curved, how balance worked in the air. They built their own wind tunnel, tested hundreds of wing shapes by hand, carefully measuring lift, drag, control. They weren't just trying to fly, they were trying to understand flight. And then they took those ideas into the real world, to the sand dunes of Kitty Hawk, where the winds were strong, the land was unforgiving, and there were crashes, hard ones, moments where everything they built failed. Wood splinters, fabric tore, machines collapsed into the sand, and each time they went back to work, rebuilding, adjusting, trying again. But they believed the answer was there if they could just figure it out. And finally, December 17th, 1903, a cold morning, winds cutting across the dunes, Orville Wright climbed into the machine. Wilbur Wright steadied the wing, and for 12 seconds, they lifted off the ground. It wasn't far, it wasn't high, but it was controlled. For the first time in history, a human being had truly flown. And in that moment, something changed. Because once that barrier was broken, it wasn't a question of if humans would go further, it's how far they would go. And once that happened, everything accelerated. Flight became aviation, aviation became industry, and industry became military power. Pilots were pushed further, faster speeds, higher altitudes, greater risk. The best of them became test pilots, flying experimental aircraft, pushing machines to their limits. And many of those pilots passed through places like Wright Patterson Air Force Base right here in Ohio, a hub of engineering, innovation, and testing. So when NASA began looking for astronauts, they weren't just looking for intelligence, they were looking for people who had already faced risk and didn't back down. People who could stay calm when everything was on the line. And that pipeline ran straight through Ohio. In 1962, John Glenn sat strapped inside a small capsule atop a rocket. At the height of the Cold War, the United States was behind, and the entire world was watching. There were real concerns. If the heat shield failed, he wouldn't survive re entry. If anything went wrong, there was no backup. But John Glenn went anyway. And when he came back down, he didn't just orbit the Earth, he gave the United States a fighting chance in the space race. Then came Neil Armstrong, the first human being to walk on the moon. But what most people don't realize is how close it came to going wrong. As the lunar module descended, the landing zone wasn't safe. Too many rocks, too dangerous. So Armstrong took control manually. Fuel was dropping. Seconds left. Warning flashed. And somehow, in those final moments, he found a place to land. One decision in that moment that would be remembered forever. And then there was Apollo 13, led by Jim Lovell. It was supposed to be routine, a mission like any other, until an explosion tore through the spacecraft. Houston, we have a problem! In an instant, everything changed. Power was limited, oxygen was running low, systems were failing. This wasn't about reaching the moon anymore. It was about survival. Every decision mattered. Every mistake could be the last. And somehow, through improvisation, calculation, and determination, they made it back. So why Ohio? It wasn't just luck. It was momentum. A state that helped invent flight became a place that trained pilots, that became a pipeline for astronauts. But maybe more than anything, it's the mindset, the willingness to try something difficult, to take risk, to go first, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed, from a bicycle shop to outer space. That thread runs straight through Ohio. And if you're in stories like this, real history, real risk, and the moment that changed everything, make sure you hit that subscribe, because this is just the beginning. This isn't just one story, it's a chain reaction. From the first flight, to the first orbit, to the first steps on the moon, Ohio has been there the entire time. And in the next story, we are going deeper, because what John Glenn did almost didn't happen at all. This is Stories by Derek, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.